Hi there, I'm Beth, and this week I'm delighted to join so many of my friends in another exciting custom doll collaboration. This is the second year that Enchantarium hosts the Ballgown Sewdown, an annual collaborative project which is more celebration than competition, our own mini version of the Met Gala, with a new theme each year. This year we've been challenged to create a monochromatic look for our dolls, choosing one hue each to explore through different brightnesses and saturations. We're allowed to use black and white very sparingly, but otherwise must stay within our chosen colour. Since I had a headless green smart doll desperately awaiting her turn, and since it's become a firm favourite colour of mine, green was an easy choice for me. At the time the theme was announced, I had just been in to see Wicked for Good at the cinema, and I was awash with inspiration from Elphaba's beautiful outfits. So much texture and flair. I sketched some loose ideas with a focus on balancing the shape and texture of the gown I would create. I would be able to use my lovely new mannequin from Minnie's House Doll Mannequin to drape the pattern on, and also this slash cutter, which was a recent gift from one of my wonderful Patreon supporters. Though I have many green fabric pieces already, none of them were large enough to create a whole dress with. So I ordered some lovely satin in a deep green colour to use as my base. I can then make use of my other greens to create the focal texture. I'd never used a slash cutter before, so I had to do a little research and work out how best to apply the technique in a miniature dress scale. I had a few ideas for the stitching directions, but I thought it would be best to do a practice piece first. The main fabric sits at the bottom. Then the other fabrics are layered on top as randomly as you'd like. Then topped off with another piece of my main fabric. I'll then stitch through all the layers in several parallel kind of rows before cutting through all but the base layer of fabric between those rows. I think some of my rows here are too close together and I need to practice a little more, but it works really well, and I really do love the texture and the pops of different greens that show through. You can do all of this manually with scissors, of course, and you can trim back layers more to show the areas you want. Here are the results of my test piece. I think I'll keep the lines pretty straight for the dress, and just have them flow outwards towards the hem. And I'll leave them a little further apart to fit the tulle in easier too. I'm really pleased with it though. For something like a cushion cover, you can also put it in the wash afterwards to distress and soften up the layers more, but that won't be necessary for this project. With a final design in mind, and Christmas fast approaching at the time, I didn't hesitate to jump right into draping my pattern on the mannequin. Using black tape to mark my seams, and white cotton to pin and trace them onto, I drafted up the bodice first of all. I then transferred the pattern to light card. So I've mocked up two versions of the bodice, the upper part of the dress, and for the third that I'm working on, I've added in seam allowance because I really don't like transferring lines like the stitch line onto the fabric in case it becomes visible in the end. So I've added on seam allowance and added in notches where I'm going to match up the seam allowance with pins before I start stitching. So you can see these all match up. So that'll be front side to front side and then back side to back side, and you can see again those markings match up. So that should help me when making, but of course they don't include the skirt that I'm going to need. So I'm just doing my sums here. So with just a tape measure and approximating by eye, I think I want my lower, like the big hem at the bottom of the skirt, to be 150 centimeters, which divided by 7, which is the number of panels that I'll have, the number of sections in between seams that I'll have, with this being the front center and that being the back center seam. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Dividing them evenly by the 150, there's roughly 21 centimeters per section of hem. And then to work out, I'm going to have to drape the full pattern, so the rest of the skirt that I'll attach to these, because it's going to go along and then flare out. I'm just doing some math here. I'm going to start from the waist because I've made notches at the waist point where the doll is narrowest. And measuring from there, I think I want the hem to drop about 50 centimeters altogether from the waist. So it'll obviously go over the hips and come down, and then about 24 centimeters from the waist, so it's about mid lower leg. I'm going to want that to start flaring out. So I'm just taking a note of those measurements. And at that point on the leg, I want the circumference, the hem of the dress, the skirt, to be about 30 centimeters. So it's going to have to sort of transition from 16 centimeter diameter all the way down to 30 centimeters, and then it's going to kick out to a total of 150 centimeters thereabouts. And with the visual look of it, you know, we've got some leeway because it's going to be quite sort of rough and raggedy. So that's me. That's my next thing. So I'm going to transfer these onto big sheets of paper and draw out the rest of the pattern, and then I'll make like a full mock-up that might become the real thing if it all works out. And that's what I did. I had to move to the floor in the living room and piece several papers together, but ended up with my paper templates and started cutting them out of the green satin. I joined the seams, then went back to add top stitching afterwards for a nicer finish. I tack stitched and checked the back seam for a zip fastening I would add later, then added on a facing piece to the upper bodice in order to neatly finish off the asymmetrical front. I was blessed with a brief visit from our resident kitty supervisor, who made sure everything was running smoothly before leaving for some dreamies. Now I have the bodice top turned out again and the zip installed, and I'm happy with the fit. I just have the back seam to join, and then it's texture time. I started with the texture I wanted at the bust, travelling in line with the asymmetric swoosh up towards her shoulder. I've used a zigzag stitch and some lovely variegated green thread for the top stitching, and trimmed back the fabric layers a little. Next is the skirt, and I start by marking with pins where I want the texture to start. I move back onto the floor and start assembling and layering my various green muslin, mesh, lace and cottons. Some look a little brown on camera here, but are actually a deeper green in person. I pin everything in place as I build up a few layers all over. Then cover it all in a layer of satin. I then painstakingly sew 42 rows of zigzag stitching to secure each layer in place. My trusty heavy-duty machine was my go-to for this project, what with all the layers and for the thicker variegated thread too, it did the trick with ease. With the long straight foot attachment on my slash cutter, I could make short work of cutting each section open. The long foot keeps the lower layer safe and intact, while the round blade cuts through everything else. Doesn't it look so interesting? I cut a little extra away here and there, but I will come back to do a full trimming pass again towards the end. Before that though, I have a green wig and her face up to take care of. Though I recently made a green wig for my Mau Mau, I did want a fresh look for this project, and I finally found a darker shade of green artificial hair to use. It is a really beautiful colour and I think it will look lovely on her. Using some of the same stretchy green power mesh that I've used in the dress, I make a hot glued wig cap. With heat protecting silicone fingertips, I could squirt on a little glue and spread it smoothly, a bit at a time. I trimmed the wig cap and prepared a great many hot glued hair wefts in the same way I showed in my recent wig making video. I worked my way around the head, adding long wefts and creating a side parting. I finished the wig with a trim and lightly curled the hair for a more voluminous and fun finish. I took both of the green heads I have to the hobby shed for a couple coats of MSC spray to prepare for their face-ups. You'll see the other head again real soon. Here's today's girl though, testing out the wig for a moment. With our limited colour palette, it's easy to see what I have to work with. Black and white, and all the green watercolour pencils and pan pastels that I own. I have some scrap green vinyl to test out the colours on, which I actually found really useful as this is my first time doing a face-up for green. I can easily see how the pastels and the pencils will look against it. She has some temporary eyes in, just while I get started, as I was really just freehanding this design, no plan before starting. I began with some green blush and lip colouring, using the darker green on the upper lip. I then started sketching in her eye details, starting with the inner liner, adding brighter colour, upper eye creases and more flourish, sketching in eyebrows, and then a little pastel eyeshadow too. After another MSC layer, I deepened some areas and added a tiny touch of green iridescent sparkle to each inner eye to catch the light. I used a very thin brush to wet the tip of a dark green pencil and brush the colour over the brows and eyes to darken them further. I also used it to paint in her lashes. Despite not having a plan in place, I was really happy with her outcome. I love her high brows and slight smile, and I was pleased that the dark green was dark enough to use for the majority of her face-up. Only her outer brows and eyelashes are black. Next, I moved on to making her some custom green eyes. I opted not to use the designs I already had here because they have small amounts of brown and yellow in them, going against the monochrome theme. Instead, I cast white UV resin eye bases and looked out some green markers to colour the iris with. I fill the iris with a middle shade and then add touches of lighter green to the lower iris before adding a black rim extended deeper at the top to create depth. I added black beads as pupils in a little UV resin to set them securely. I then added a little more iridescent green to the eyes before topping off the domes fully and sealing with a glossy top coat. I made 3 so I could choose the best pair for her, and I set them in place. Doesn't she look stunning? She's nearly finished, but she definitely deserves a nice manicure for her final look. I used UV resin again to create 10 tiny fingernails, curing them before colouring with an acrylic marker. I could then add a dab of glue to each fingertip before pressing them into place. A reversible manicure, but sturdy enough for this project. They're so delicate looking, I really like them. And since I was thinking about finishing touches, I whipped up a little necklace of a green crystal heart with an invisible thread band and a green beaded bracelet too. One last touch of green with a floral hair clip to go to one side of her hair. And finally, even though they aren't visible in the end, a simple pair of black heels. Please let me thank and welcome in my newest Patreon members. Your support allows me to purchase materials for collaborations like this and is massively appreciated. Welcome to Antonia Feliciano, Lynn Wilkinson, and D. Aster K. Thank you all so much. And a big thanks to Enchantarium and all of our other collaborators today. Enchantarium will also have a video out today, and some of our group will only be participating through Instagram using the hashtag BallgownSewdown26. So please check out my description box below for links and details of where to find all the creators joining us today with videos and posts. We have Threads of Elysium with orange, Magical Girl Kit Kat with yellow, myself with green, Enchantarium with blue, Puppy52 with purple, Smart Doll Boutique UK with pink, My Lady Disdain with black, and O Costuero with white. I can't wait to see what everyone creates, so be sure to check them all out, and please leave everyone today a like and a lovely comment. And with that, I'll leave you with my newest custom smart doll, who I shall name Haruki. I really hope you enjoyed watching me create today. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!